So I was scrolling through the available mods, as is my wont, and I came across this, the Better Zoom mod, which I had to try it out. Let's face it, the PC has a pretty good zoom option by default. It's rather generous in my opinion in terms of how far in and far out you can zoom, but the more the merrier, and I was just so curious I had to take a look at this mod. It's called the Better Zoom mod, and it seems really bare bones, which is fine because all it does is zoom in and out, but also invert apparently, so it should be pretty straightforward to use. If you go to the mod configuration menu, there is the obvious option to configure this thing, and if you hover over the zoom level bar, which we will see in a minute, it says you can actually use the plus and minus keys. Now, I didn't do this because it didn't do anything for me. In fact, all it did was change the mini-map zoom rather than the actual zoom. But look at this. This is as far as you can zoom in, which I'd say is more than enough. In fact, any more than this and you couldn't really see beyond your character. So I'm celebrating the high zoom with these wacky wavy inflatable arm flailing tube men. There was a shipping error and I have a lot of these in stock, so I have them on top of my base. But let's play around with the settings just a little bit. That's as far out as, or as far in rather, as you can go. If you go all the way to the other end, look at this. And if you're thinking that the controls are also inverted, you are correct. So if you want to move down, you really have to hit up, right is left, etc. So it's really weird to play it like this, and I guess this could be a weird Let's Play challenge for some people. I don't know that I'm necessarily good enough at Terraria to do that. But other than a Let's Play challenge or some kind of gimmick video, I'm not really sure what the utility of this is other than maybe satisfying your curiosity. Anyway, let's play around with it a little bit more and zoom out less than the regular level. And this is what it looks like. It says you can zoom out more, and you can, but there are limits. And I think this is probably based on what the game engine itself is going to render. What I noticed was that of course, the background is rendered like normal, but the actual playable area remains basically unchanged as far as I can tell. Maybe there's a little edge on the right and left that's extra. It's kind of cool when you see the damage pop up like that, but I think what it's doing is it's rendering a few objects outside of the rendered area, things like enemies and dropped items, but pretty much everything else remains pretty consistent with the regular limit of the screen. But whatever the case may be, it does look kind of weird to see it kind of render in chunks like that. It's obviously a little different than what you're used to. It reminds me a little bit of back in the day. If you played the old Doom games, you could zoom out the screen, and Wolfenstein too for that matter. You could make the screen rendering size smaller. It kind of reminds me of that. But yeah, there on the right, you see those zombies coming in at night. They're obviously being rendered outside of the playable area, which is kind of cool, and it lets you target things. So I guess there's some tactical advantage. You see on the left there some objects that are rendered beyond the rendered area. So although things like your base and the trees and the terrain, they're not being rendered, there are a few things that are. And so I guess there's a method to the madness. What exactly is and isn't rendered isn't entirely clear, but I guess the main utility of this is that certain enemies will appear outside of the rendered area. So if you're in a fight, like this one, I've spawned a few bosses, you can see that things like the Eater of Worlds is going to be rendered beyond the visible limits of the screen that would normally be there, so you can kind of track where it's moving. Now, if you're going to be cheating this much, you're probably going to be using other cheats as well. I certainly am. I've got God mode enabled just because I'm really just doing this to show you guys how this works. So yeah, a lot of these bosses, things like the Brain of Cthulhu, Eye of Cthulhu, all of that, you're not really going to derive much of an advantage from it. It's things like these worm enemies. So I guess the Destroyer would also factor in as something you might benefit from having this zoomed out feature on. Really marginal at best, more of a curiosity than anything else, but it is kind of cool to see. It's almost like peering into the background of the game engine. You can see what the game is actually doing in terms of what it's rendering and not rendering. This begs the question though, what about the Moonlord? Is there any difference for the Moonlord? Well, let's find out. And the brightness obviously is only on the regular area, but it really doesn't look like there's much different here, other than, of course, some of the orbs that he casts out that fly in your direction are going to be visible from further off. So I suppose there's some minor advantage from this, but really not much at all. Most of the fight does seem to remain on the screen, and of course zooming in is actually going to be to your detriment. I guess this could be a sort of challenge mode, because you can't even see where the hands are. I mean, this is pretty darn difficult. I know you can kind of intuit where they are, but you're really not seeing where these magic spells are coming from when he shoots at you and that sort of thing, so you're really at a huge disadvantage. Thankfully I'm in God mode, so there's nothing he can do to me, and I've already won the fight. But you can see what a huge disadvantage this zoom level would be. It's really, again, more of a curiosity feature than anything else. Kind of cool that it's there, but really that's pretty much it. You can zoom out, as it were, a little more than the regular limits, which lets you see some stuff off the screen, but it's not like it's rendering, 4 times the area on the screen if you have this massive zoomed out feature. It really isn't a true zoom. It's just kind of zooming as far as the game engine will let you do it. So anyway, this is why this isn't in the must-try mods playlist. Not a knock against this mod, but the fact that the game simply seems incapable of rendering more than the zoom levels that are standard, I think makes this less useful than it otherwise might have been. If this was a thing where you really did have the game rendering all the way out on the max screen size, then this would have to go in the must-try mods. As it is, it's interesting enough. It's on this playlist. So yeah, hats off to the creator. It's a neat little tool, and again, it lets you see some of the inner workings of the game engine, I think. There's not really much more to say of that. I'm not sure I'm going to continue to use this. Again, the plus and minus keys didn't work for me. If there's something I was doing wrong, feel free to let me know. I'm always eager for input. Anyway, that's the Better Zoom mod, so thanks for watching, and whether you're zoomed in or zoomed out, or even inverted, good luck to you Terrarians, and thanks for watching.